much more than the greatest departmental store in the United Kingdom. Its services to the...
Pre-war, Great Britain imported 2/3 of the food it ate.
And the last room, number 6, let the tea brew for 5.
Dorothy Dandridge plays Margot, the exciting and alluring West Indian, and John...
Growing up in Barbados, I was fascinated by what I saw on the screen. Look, me there in the background, an extra to your story. But I have my own. This was not a reflection of our culture. This was not our identity. White mirrors didn't reflect me. They know nothing of us. So we shall show them.
Well, the Barbados Film Ministry at this point in time is quite active with the introduction of a whole lot of young students from community college as well as University of the West Indies. There are quite a lot of youngsters now in the film ministry. It is also active because of the cost of equipment. When I was involved in it in 30-something years ago, the equipment was bulky and quite expensive. Now the equipment has gotten to a point where students or young people who really are not even working, who are not employed, could purchase a camera, some sort of audio equipment, and they could actually go and produce some sort of video.
Barbadian film aesthetic, I think, is yet to be defined. I don't think we have done enough investigation or have produced enough media to really lay that down in stone yet. I think you could ask me that question in 10 years and we could have a conversation about it. But the thing about aesthetics, especially when you try to be culturally specific about aesthetics, is that, you know, things change, you know, and especially where we are in the world, you know, we are being influenced, and traditionally we have been influenced by a multiplicity of cultural forms, right? So you can't really say that there is a Caribbean aesthetic unless you open yourself to the idea that, you know, what our aesthetic is a polyglot of several different aesthetics. You know, I often parallel art in the Caribbean with food in the Caribbean, you know, so when we think about our cuisine, our diet, the amount of influences that we have is so broad, is so wide, you know, everything from, you know, macaroni pie to, you know, jerk conch, right? So, yeah, I think we're way too early in the game to start trying to lay down that stuff. I do think, however, though, that when we get to the point where we are starting to try to put some clear definition on our film aesthetic, that it will by and large happen around language, the actual language, the vocabulary, colloquial language that happens in dialogue and in the scripts will start to define, you know, what our images look like and feel like.
They brainwashed us with what they called culture, showing us that we could be just like them. But we didn't want to be just like them. We wanted to be ourselves, to find our identity, to find our aesthetic.
Those last few days, any chance we had to escape, we would. We would just hop on a bus heading anywhere far away.
Well, we have to define what we mean by Barbadian cinema. Do we mean an identity, a cinematic identity that is Barbadian, that when someone sits down and looks at the cinematic elements, we can actually identify things that are Barbadian? If so, then that is a process that takes time and takes many films, many filmmakers working from a perspective of trying to develop a Barbadian story and working and honing those ideas of character, structure, style, the look of the film, cinematography. All these factors are going to play a very important role in identifying a Barbadian film. And so this is going to take time. It's going to take a lot of what we call imperfection. That is, there are going to be a lot of mistakes. There are going to be a lot of good mistakes. But the level of filmmaking now, we can't make a claim to it being a Barbadian film or industry yet. Though we do have films that show glimpses of what might exist in the future. And I think that it's important that we think about how the industry is going to grow, how we are going to contribute to that, was your question earlier, and how we are going to continue to develop the freedom to express our hopes and dreams of a cinema of the future. How are we going to, for example, match the work that the George Lammings and Timothy Calendars, for example, in taking ideas of the folk and crafting stories that give you that sense of quote-unquote Barbadianness that an audience identifies with. It's very important. We already have what we call misses, that is, people trying to do things. Some of it gets lost in that they claim it exists, it's like that. But film is about an interpretation of reality. There is a Barbadian reality we all know, mid-articulate at times or find difficulty in articulating, but cinematic expression is trying to reproduce that, not in terms of mere imitation, but bringing a personal perspective, an artistic perspective to it, so that we see ourselves and see the aspect of ourselves becoming is the idea. We see an aspect of human existence that only culture can represent, and that culture can capture. And for me, that's the struggle to do that.
We began to show the world our culture, our language, our ancestors, our dance. These were the faces we identified with. This was us.
When we made that film, myself and the producer, Lisa Harewood, we were very interested at that time in the idea of regional identity. And so the cast of the film does incorporate a regional focus. You know, by and large, we shot in Barbados, so by and large our cast is Barbadian, but we were very careful not to specify where we were in the region. And we were able to do that because we felt that the story we were telling was a regional story. And, you know, as we traveled with the film and so on, we discovered that that was actually true. You know, this idea of land being redistributed outside of the native or local population, and, you know, all these things that we were seeing at, you know, the turn of the 20th century with, you know, the West Coast being kind of parceled out to foreign interests was happening right through the region. A lot of large multinational tourism entities were coming into the region. So you have a Marriott everywhere now, a Hyatt everywhere now, and so on. And so that's what we were exploring, this idea of land as an indicator of independence. So yes, it is a Barbadian film, but I think, you know, following on from the direction of, you know, Caribbean artists that were working around the time of independence and through the 80s, when the Caribbean was experimenting with socialism, that the focus was not so much about being specific to your particular island, but about trying to find binaries with the region. You know, a lot of the stuff that I guess would have generated the idea of CARICOM or the idea of CARIFESTA and things like that was where we were coming from with that project.
Part of the motivation of moving back to Barbados is to immerse myself again in the culture and to go back to those stories, some scripts that I've written and some ideas that I have for exploring that culture and to begin to help formulate, you know, the idea of cinema, and both in terms of teaching and creating a community of film and filmmakers and film critics, film audiences. I see it as very important in terms of the society exposing itself to critical viewing of images. We are an image-saturated world, and Barbados is going to enter that world, and we need to not only enter it with a certain literacy, that is the ability to consume and understand images, but we have to equally create those images and understand the creative process behind those images, because there are a lot of stereotypes out there about the Caribbean, about who we are as Barbadians, as people who love the 3 S's, I call them: sea, sand, and sex, and to move beyond those simplistic notions of character and explore the human range of who we are. I think that is what portends for the future.
No longer shall we try to replicate images produced by our imperial overseers. We shall forge our own identity, finding our aesthetic, finding our reflection.